Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to EFL Debate, the League One podcast, and we've got a plethora of guests for you tonight. First of all, our regulars, Joel Shooter from the excellent Shrimps Trust podcast, and Ed Walker from the wonderful D3D4 Football podcast as well. But two special guests tonight. We're hoping to be joined by Joe Bell from Argyle Life very, very shortly. But for now, we're joined by Joe Beardsall from Red All Over. How are you, Joe?
Very good, thank you. Sorry for keeping you waiting, gents. I was a little bit late, but I'm here. A little bit like Barnsley's push for automatic promotion, I think. But, there we go. Segue for you there.
First reference of the night.
Getting giddy.
I know, very interesting. I'm sure we'll get on to that. I'm delighted to be joined by Colin Yates from the Fanzone of Bolton Wanderers. How are you, Col?
Yeah, very well, thank you, Gab. Very nice to join the podcast, and thanks very much for the invite.
Yeah, no problem at all. I don't suppose Bolton are quite in the automatic promotion race, but looking good for a playoff spot at the moment. How are you feeling as a Wanderer?
I think I'm still confident. I think I'd be disappointed if we weren't able to cement that playoff spot over the next few weeks, because I think obviously we've done a bit of a bad run, but we've spent quite a large percentage of the season in the higher echelons of the league, and I'm pretty positive. But at the same time, you do worry a little bit about the form and obviously the fact that Wycombe are closing that gap a little bit as well. But yeah, I'd fancy us, to be fair, against everybody but Sheffield Wednesday and Ipswich, with all due respect to other teams in the playoffs. But we've got to get there first.
Coming to you on Bolton, Joel, because you played them at home quite recently. You managed to, I don't even know if nullifying is the right word, but certainly they put together a pressing performance that kind of seemed to stop Bolton from doing what they do best. Do you think Morecambe might have exposed one of the weaknesses in this Bolton side?
Yeah, but I mean, I'd say it was a performance when we did well to go kind of toe-to-toe with one of the better sides in the division. And that's something, well, obviously last night aside, but that's something we've generally been able to do quite well. I think it does kind of show that, I don't know, maybe the dimensions out of our pitch, they're quite little and tight, and in those kind of tight little grounds, you can just press them high and get on top of them. We did it last season as well under a different manager. Yeah, and I think it does show that you can get on top of them, and ultimately, the way Bolton play, they stick to their principles, and as much as that's a good thing, that's at the same time it can be sometimes something that you can sometimes exploit, obviously, and that's what we did, especially in the first half. We created quite a lot of good moments and half chances that we didn't quite capitalise on through winning the ball back in midfield and kind of going a bit of a man-to-man system. But they've got plenty of good players. I know they're missing quite a few strikers at the moment, so when they get back in, you'd like to think that when Bob Larson and Adebayo, when they're kind of back fully fit, I don't know if Bob Larson will be back in time for the playoffs, but when they're fully fit, they'll give them a bit more of a direct option should they need it, which might be handy at times. But yeah, and ultimately, they've got good quality on that side. I think we did well to nullify them the day. Maybe other teams will take a look at what we did, but like you keep saying, I think every week we come on and it's another team making a little automatic promotion push. The other week it was Bolton pushing up there, Derby a few weeks back, and that was Barnsley on the little way up. So, it's just so hard to predict. But I do think still that current four will probably be the one that goes in the playoffs.
I mean, Col, if Wycombe were to put a run together, what would it take for Bolton just to make sure they nail down a top 6 spot? Because sometimes I look at it and ideally you want to have a clear playing identity and a consistent formation and a relatively consistent first 11. But sometimes I think to get over the line at this stage of the season, sometimes you can need one or two subtle tweaks to just freshen things up a little bit. And I look back to 2 seasons ago when Bolton were actually 19th in League Two, which feels a long time ago now. And then you switched from the 4-3-4-1-2 to a 4-2-3-1, get my numbers right there. And then all of a sudden you won 16 of your last 22 games. And I just wonder, is there a place for 4-2-3-1 in the remainder of the season?
I'm not so sure whether or not it's a tactical adjustment that will be necessary, Gab. I think we are somewhat reliant upon Conor Bradley as an outlet on the right-hand side. For obvious reasons, he's a talented young lad, but we just need that little bit of balance. And getting George Johnson back in the side on the left-hand side of defence will help significantly for that, because he's been missing for a few weeks now, and it's cost us not only obviously the fact that we've been on quite a bit of a tough run in terms of the amount of games we've been playing, but he's such a vital cog to that defensive structure, and he offers allows the fullback on the left wing back to push forward and join the attacks and give us two options on either side. I think in terms of what we need, we just need a little, obviously, like every other team in the playoff push and promotion push, you need a run of games that you're winning consistently. And I think the fact that we've gone on a bit of a bad run recently is probably a good thing, because we're kind of getting out of the way. We've not got too many kind of games in quick succession over the next few months. So I think, what is it, 8-9 games remaining, I think, in the league?
About 10.
Yeah, 10. Yeah. So, I mean, I think we've got 9. I'm not sure on that. We might have 10 games with the EFL Trophy final. But as a whole, I think we just need a bit of consistency in getting this bad run out of the way, hopefully starting, maybe not necessarily on Friday against Sheffield Wednesday, but certainly our next home game.
It's interesting you mentioned the EFL Trophy final, Cole, because coming to you, Joe, when Barnsley went up from this level via the playoffs back in 2016, you actually won a Wembley double, and that they called it Oakwell South, I suppose. And sometimes you think a cup run like that can introduce fatigue and things like that. But sometimes, as in your case, it can just give the whole club a lift. And you went from being sort of 23rd, I think, in November that season to going up via the playoffs and winning the double. So do you think this could be a positive for Bolton if they're able to win at Wembley?
Yeah, I mean, I look at that cup run in 2016. I think we'd already got momentum, so I'm not sure how much the cup actually played a part in that. Maybe I remember in 2008, I think it was similar. We did have that cup momentum in the FA Cup with the league trophy.
The Jay and
the same. Yeah,
Brian Howard's goals.
Yeah, getting to the semi-final, beating Liverpool and Chelsea. I don't think it's quite the same that year. We just already got the league momentum, and then the cup was, the cup, and we were just winning all the games.
It
really,
gives you an extra bit of something. It felt like. Yeah,
it'll be a great day out. Amazing for both sets of fans. I'm sure Cole's looking forward to it.
What's the thing when you're rowing chant? Did you do that?
Yes, we did that for Oxford. Yeah, so that was brilliant. But yeah, I mean, it can do. I'm not saying it won't. But yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? I think from a Bolton point of view, really good team when they've played us. We've had some real battles with them this season. So I can definitely say they're going to be a challenge if they do get into that top 6. Like I said, Cole, I think it just needs that little pick up of form just to get over the line, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I thought with Gareth Ainsworth in charge of Wickham and his experience of this time at season, I really thought they might sneak in. But at this point, obviously, Matt Bloomfield doing a decent job, start at Wickham, but it's difficult to say, innit? Until he's had a few more games under his belt, you don't really know whether they're going to be consistent enough to pick you.
Yeah. I think he's trying to change the not the way they play, but over a short. He's not got long, has he, really, to adjust that kind of so-called way that Wickham play, and he probably wants to try and adjust it. But I think it might be difficult for him to fit that in, towards the business end of the season.
Yeah, it's a great point. I do wonder if the Barnsleys and Boltons are going to be a little bit further along than maybe Wickham are in terms of establishing the way that their managers want to play. Coming to you on that, Ed. For me, I think Aaron Morley's going to hold the key to Bolton Wanderers' playoff chances, because I think he's one of the best midfielders in the league.
I'd have to agree. I've always kind of really highly rated Bolton's midfield in general. Josh Sheen in there. Carl Dempsey, Kieran Lee playing attacking midfield roles too. I think George Thomason was a really key part of. I remember he was a really key part of the League Two promotion season as a really young lad, and you always kind of feared a little bit that maybe with the players that were likely to come into the League One season, he could drop down the pecking order, and he kind of has. But I think he's still contributed a little bit this season. I've certainly seen him making recent squads. So yeah, always felt to me like the strongest part of the Bolton team is that midfield. And there's no doubt to me that Morley, you could see it at Rochdale. He is a top quality player to have in that division.
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
sorry to interject, Gab. It's a really, really good point, Ed, actually, because we've actually been lacking in midfield in recent games because of injuries. Josh Thomason, he's a young lad, but he is capable of stepping into that team seamlessly, to be honest with you. That on top of the fact that we've maybe missing MJ Williams as well recently is another, not necessarily the most popular player within the Bolton fans.
It's that discipline he provides, though, isn't it?
Exactly that, yeah. Discipline, a little bit of composure on the ball, good distributor. It obviously can put his foot in as well. And we've been relying quite heavily on Carl Dempsey in recent weeks, which has been a bit of a good thing because he's contributed quite well. But you can tell
he's more of a box-to-box dynamo type, whereas I think MJ Williams, you're probably going to get him sitting back a little bit more.
Yeah, so we're getting legs back in midfield, which is what I'm trying to get at, and there's been a really good point with that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I wanted to come back to you about Aaron Morley, Cole, because when I saw him at Rochdale, he was, for periods of this game, this was against Sutton United last season, for periods of this game, like his touch, his vision, his sort of range of passes and the way he sort of caressed the ball, outstanding. You could see that was way above League Two level. But there was this mad 10-minute spell when actually it was the opponents who had 10 men, and yet they were kind of bombarding the box, and it felt like Morley looked a little bit lost, a little bit of a rabbit in the headlights, a little bit struggling with the physicality or the intensity of the game. And I just wonder, do you think that Ian Everton, the management team, have done a certain amount of work on Morley to turn him from this sort of playmaker type that's not quite the finished package to much more of a complete proposition?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, to be honest with you, he's come on leaps and bounds this season, and you kind of noticed that in his game, especially the first half of the season. And I think playing with experienced EFL midfielders in the league at League One / kind of Championship level has helped his game come on. And obviously, someone like myself who's been watching Bolton for coming up to 30 years, I've watched a hell of a lot of midfields over the years. And don't get me wrong, he's not up there with you heroes of this world, of course, or Campos, etc. But certainly you can see he's got a lot about his game in terms of the way he can control the game. I do think
Real Madrid certainly on the cards, mate. If he carries on like that,
hopefully he's got a good sign up. We've got a good signing on percentage of that one, if that's the case. No, but I think he needs a little bit of protection from time to time, though, and I think that that is needed to help him control the game in midfield, which is something that he's very good at once he gets plenty of space.
Absolutely. Well, talking of good technical players, we're joined by Plymouth Argyle fan Joe Bell. Great to have you on the show, Joe. How are you?
Good, Gab. Sorry for my tardiness timekeeping wise.
Oh, no problem at all. You're actually a bit earlier than we expected, but we'll bring you in. Just we'll come on to Plymouth Argyle and Barnsley with Joe in a minute. But I just wanted to talk to you.
Do we have to?
Yes.
Well,
yes, we do, Joe.
I wanted to touch on Bolton a little bit in terms of their form under Ian Everton and the sort of progress they've made. I don't know what you've made of them this season from your games against them with Plymouth Argyle.
Well, they battered us at their place back in January, and we showed a bit of rearguard resilience to come out of it with a clean sheet. And to be fair, in the game down at Home Park, they were banging the game for large parts of it. We were probably had the more clinical edge. I'm sure every supporter of both fan bases are delighted we get a third crack at each other in a couple of weeks' time. But the progress has been steady. I think it's not too dissimilar to his time at Barrow. There was steady progress. There was always a steady progression with them. They found their feet at the level this year and they're going well. Obviously, they're having a bit of a wobble now, but they're a good side, Gab. And they've probably, in my opinion, got enough credit in the bank to have a slight blip now and still come out of it the other side.
Yeah, I think in terms of the playoff scramble, a lot depends on how consistent Wycombe Wanderers can be between now and the end of the season.
Do they feel consistent to you, Gab? Because to me, I'll be honest, they don't. I know there's only a handful of games at Bloomfield so far, but I mean, Tuesday was a great response to the weekend. But just the fact that they have those two results side by side kind of feels like to me they're going to maybe lack that consistency to properly get in there before the season's up.
It's a great point. I saw flashes on Tuesday night of what Matt Bloomfield's trying to do. There were some lovely moves with McCleary, with Wing, with Chem Campbell. Obviously, Brandon Hanlon and Shea DeBauer are starting to establish a partnership. But I do know what you mean because it wasn't like they were controlling it from start to finish. I still think they're not quite as advanced a stage of their trajectory as maybe Bolton are under Everett or Barnsley are under Duff. So I think I agree with them. Either they might struggle to find the consistency required. But they actually host Barnsley on Saturday, which is why I wanted to come to you, Joe, on the Reds. You're having a fantastic season, aren't you? It's almost banished last year to distant memory almost.
We don't talk about last year. Not anymore anyway. But yeah, I mean, there's something, I keep saying it, there's something special happening at Barnsley at the minute. It has erupted. So for context, for the last few years, our atmosphere at Oakwell has been very quiet, and that's not always traditionally been the case. Obviously, we had the pandemic and everything with that, and when we were in the playoffs in the Championship, we weren't there. So it was naturally quite quiet then. But
no noise from the Barnsley boys.
Yeah, I mean, last season obviously was terrible for us getting relegated, and it was really, really poor. So you can understand the atmosphere not being great. But we played Cambridge a few weeks ago, and basically we've got a man sent off, and there's been quite a few things happening at the club that have been going against us at the minute, and it just sparked something. Fans started to sing, and since then it has been electric. We went into the derby game.
The goal seemed to have a bit of a singing section.
That's me.
you're the whole band.
Not me, but that's our little gang. Yeah, just directly behind the goal, and then obviously the main ones are the noisier ones are up in the top corner. But we get we give them a little bit of an upbeat, you know what I mean? We give them a little bit incentive to shout with us. But yeah, so something's happened. Something has happened, and it just clicked. We went into the derby game fully expecting to win, and we won. No disrespect to derby.
Fully expecting to win.
I was, yeah.
I still remember the FA Cup game where they tore you over at Pride Park. This is the thing, isn't it? It's a weird thing with football. When you get, I believe that fans make a massive difference. I'm sure most of you guys, if all you agree with me. And when that atmosphere is rocking, there's something special about the place. And I'm sure it's the same for you guys when your grounds are rocking. And at the minute, there's just a momentum carrying Barnsley. No disrespect to you, Joe, but I predicted a massive, and I've not done this all season, I predicted a massive 5-1 win between Barnsley and Plymouth, and I was laughed at by many of his own. And I was laughed at by many of his own. And I know it weren't 5-1, but it was 3-0. And in the end, in fairness, she played really well first half, but I think it was fairly comfortable for us in the end. So there's something happening at Barnsley. But I do have to admit that this weekend is a biggie because Wickham turned us over at Oakwell. They scored 3 worldies. It was like playing Real Madrid. So if they play like that, it's going to be a really tough game for us at Adams Park. But yeah, something like I said, something's happening. Momentum's building. I think we've got the momentum either going into the playoffs, but I think we've still got a sneaky chance at top 2.
Very interesting.
Big call, I know.
Big call, yeah. Joel, I want to... Oh, sorry. Do you want to say...
No, I was just going to say, Joel, we felt like that a couple of weeks ago, and it could soon change.
It can, yeah, it can. That could be. We could lose 3-0 to Wickham at the weekend. That could be here with egg in my face. But there's just something. I said it when we were. So we talked about. Davey talked about 2016 when we were bottom of the league and something happened and we ended up finishing 6th, winning the JPT.
Was it a last-minute equaliser against Sheffield United from Adam?
Yeah, and it just sparked something at Oakwell. Well, it feels similar vibes. Something is happening. Something is awoken. The Giants is awoken. Not that we're a giant club, but. Yeah.
Can I ask you a quick question? Sorry, Joe. Yeah. Sorry, Gab. I'm just quite curious. Obviously, we established before that there's what we're looking at 9-10 games remaining. That kind of good feeling that you've got, do you think that might have come a little bit prematurely? Because it don't take much to.
Great question.
This
is it. You could look at it either way. So Ipswich, sadly for us, has just been postponed because they've got international call-ups, which was the next week. But for the next 2, we got Wickham and Wednesday. So it was going to be Wickham, Wednesday and Ipswich, which you could say from a Barnsley point of view, perfect time with the way we're playing. But Ipswich fans and Wednesday fans would probably be saying great time for them as well because they're playing out of the skin. I think if we'd have got through those 3 games, or if we get through these 2 games now and keep that momentum, then I think we've got a very good chance of putting some serious pressure on Plymouth. Wednesday are just absolutely, unbelievable, aren't they? I think on a South Yorkshire derby on his day, we might beat them. We did obviously beat them at Ills brilliant season. Not going to apologise too much for that Wednesday fans for mentioning that, but we did. So chance we could beat them on Tuesday, but it's a biggie.
I think the difference between I think there's Barnsley against Wednesday is going to be an interesting one because on the one hand, I think Sheffield Wednesday, what they've got in their favour is just this incredible strength in depth where players who you could argue would get into championship teams are on their bench. And yet I think for Barnsley, what you've got is an incredibly well coached side that's just got really good patterns of play.
Really consistent starting 11 as well.
Yes. Yeah,
Same
exactly.
11 every single game.
I think Barnsley are actually a more fluent side and better coached side than Sheffield Wednesday, but I think Sheffield Wednesday have more of the individual quality. So it's going to be a fascinating matchup, really.
Yeah, the other thing for us is we've got strength in depth now. We've been saying all season, the thing that's going to hinder us is we didn't have strength in depth. And then in January, we made some really good signings. People like Bobby Thomas at the back, who's been brilliant, absolutely outstanding. I don't think we've lost a game since he came in.
And talking of Thomases, you've got Luke Thomases.
Luke Thomas back, who's absolutely brilliant when he's on his game
got
as well.
More Thomases in the tank.
Yeah, that's it. We've got more Thomases in the tank. Love it.
I'm going.
Everyone now. They've all switched off. There we go. Thanks for that, game. It's usually me that comes out with those ones.
I kind of like that, Gab, to be fair.
Yeah, it was pretty quick. It was pretty quick, to be fair. But yeah, so
you don't have to put it with every week, Cole.
Well, yeah, I'm a guest, Anna. So
every single week.
All right, I was talking about sinking Plymouth on our show, and so there we go. So it's I'm just as bad. But yeah, so something's happening. Obviously, there's some great sides in there, so I'm not going to be saying that we're 100% going to get automatically promotion, but I just think there's a real chance if we can keep this momentum going. It is a big if, but right now we're on absolute fire. Like, we're scoring goals from anywhere.
There's two teams you don't want to play right now, and it's Barnsley and Sheffield Wednesday for the same reasons, really. They're just absolutely flying.
I put Ipswich in that bracket as well.
Yeah, I'd have to say, yeah.
They were impressive the other day against us.
Yeah, I'd definitely put Ipswich in that bracket.
Okay, I'll add
well.
Ipswich, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Joel, coming to you, it's interesting because you beat Barnsley back in, was it October sort of time? And you beat them 1-0 and they didn't actually create anything. I think you scored in the first half and then sort of held them out with a pretty solid defensive job. And then obviously they turned you over quite comfortably in the return fixture. So does that show in one sense how Barnsley have grown as the season's gone on? Maybe starting a little bit, not quite like a Michael Duff side, but then they've kind of grown with the season. Is that your picture of it as a Morecambe fan?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't been turned over by them quite yet at their place. That's not for another couple of weeks, but I think it is on the card.
I was just thinking.
It's just forecasting the future.
I saw it when Joe was talking earlier. I was thinking as if, have they already played Morecambe? I was thinking that's probably what would have happened.
In fairness, you are right. They will probably turn us over when we go to Oakwell. So maybe it's a good thing that there's a train strike on that day, and I probably won't be able to go. But no, yeah, it's interesting because obviously back at the start of the season, like you say, they didn't have quite that consistency. I think some of the players who were making more than him, I think they were missing Norwood that day, from what I can remember, and obviously that's a bit of a loss. And from what I'm seeing now, obviously that game when we played them, Adam Phillips had just kind of started to tease his way into the side, and he actually didn't have a very good game against us. Obviously now, nobody needs to tell me what a wonder of a right foot he's got. So, so it does show how far they've come because, like you say, they didn't recreate a great deal at our place, and it was a bit disjointed. I was up in the press box for that one. I remember I was quite near to Michael Duff, and he was just losing his rag the whole game. Not at the ref or anything, just at his own players. They weren't doing exactly what he wanted. They were going. I think a lot of the feeling was I felt he thought they were going long a bit too easily and not making options.
By the way, Michael Duff's record at Morecambe must be awful. Like, I think you beat him 4-0 once, and then 1-0 in Cheltenham's title-winning season, and then what was it? Beat them at the Globe.
We did the double over them in the promotion winning season.
Of course, yeah.
Although they did the double over us last season under Duff, so he got his revenge. But but we've done all right against some of the Duff sides under Derek. But it's just, I think when we go to their place,
just admit you're terrified. It's okay. I feel the same.
Yeah, I think it's a good chance that we get turned over with our away record at the minute. It's just been so poor, and look at the form Barnsley are in. I know they've got a couple of tough fixtures before we go there. Maybe that'll hopefully that'll take a bit of the wind out of their sails. Sorry, Joe, but I'd quite like to stay up. And you've got the playoffs are basically sewn up anyway. So why don't you just give us a?
We want to win league, mate. That's where we're looking. Even after Wednesday, we're chasing them. We're not far away from them in can't put my teeth back in terms of geography. So we'll chase them. I think just one point I want to make on that, Joe, is James Norwood. I just want to mention him because you could have easily thought coming to Barnsley at his stage in his career, sort of last few years, maybe. I think he's like 31. So he's still got a few years in him, but. Not know what to expect. Is he going to have that youth? We've been quite used to having younger players coming through, so it's a bit of a weird one for Barnsley to get James Norwood. He has been fantastic. That lad has run his blood to water every single game, and he's leading the press like
what
so much. His energy.
Cole's drink, by the way. Where's this come from with him?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think he's a confidence player, and I think he's having James Norwood at side here, and James Norwood's running defenses ragged, and then you've got Devante Cole, who's also, he's really fit, so he just gets the ball then and runs at teams and puts it in back at net. But the partnership, you wouldn't expect it, but they've formed quite a good partnership, and like I said, a lot of it is starting from James Norwood's just really aggressive press, and teams just can't handle it. He runs at you like absolute like a steam train. So, honestly.
You sound like Bruno Tonioli there, Joe. It's like a steam train.
I think there's a lot to be said, isn't there, for players north of 30, because I think there's often a misconception over what they can offer you in terms of their abilities, be it pressing or just in general. Like, obviously, we've got Kieran Lee, who we adore the bloke, and obviously we try and wrap him as much cotton wool as we can. We just signed Cameron Jerome as well, obviously, as another player in the later of his career. But I agree, like, even to the 31, it's not really an age, is it, really? Especially these days with what they can offer in terms of sports science and whatnot.
Yeah, and it's just been what Barnsley lacked last season. We had no leadership, and obviously now we've got a gaffer that leads from the front in Michael Duff, but then to have someone like James Norwood on the pitch, you see him going at young lads and just do this and just do that, little things like that. He's bringing them on while also just absolutely playing out of his skin as well. So it's been brilliant.
Brilliant. Joe, I want to come to you about the automatic promotion race, and I should emphasise here I'm talking to Joe from Argyle Life, not to Joe from Red. I mean, you might have your say at some point. But Joe Bell, what do you think of Argyle's promotion chances? Because a few weeks ago, I think Ipswich fans would have written themselves out of top 2 and would have almost said, are we going to make top 6 now? Some of them would have said. All of a sudden, they've won, I think it's 4 games on the spin.
5.
1 goal, 5 on the spin. Thank you. Glad someone's done their research. 5 on the spin, not conceded many goals. And Argyle have dropped a few points. So where are you sitting now as part of the Green Army, Joe?
I wish you had me on a couple of weeks ago, Gab. That's what I will say. We're still in a very good position. Ipswich has snapped their hand off to be where we are. Barnsley has snapped their hand off to be where we are. Derby and Bolton would do the same. Look, we're still in a pretty enviable place. We all know that the home form isn't really worth talking about because people get bored about hearing it. It's the away form, Gab. The last 3 of the last 4 away games, we've been to Hillsborough and got beat 1-0. We've been to Peterborough and they put 5 past us in a game that could have finished 13-12. And we went to Barnsley at the weekend, and for an hour we were relatively competitive, and for a half hour we were really not, is the simple answer. The caveat to that is getting Barnsley out of the way now is the perceived tough away games against teams at the top end of the division are now done for. We have to go to Morecambe, and I'm sure Derek will have a rabbit up his sleeve. I'm just trying to think where else we got to go. We got to go to Shrewsbury. We've got to have the derby yet as well against Exeter. So there are still
That's
tough
away.
games.
Is that away as well?
Yeah.
I don't know why I think this, but I almost feel like games at St James's Park are going to be a bit more of an edge to them than games at Home Park. I don't know what makes me think that, but I don't know.
Possibly because it's an us against us against them sort of mentality for City, isn't it? You know, there's obviously half the attendance that would have been down here for the home game, of which 6,500, 7,000 of them will all be baying for blood. They'll want to get their own back on us for the game down here in October. But we are still on, what is it, 72, 73 points, 74, to correct myself, 74 points. I mean, we're probably going to need to win a minimum of 5 of our last 10, at least pick up a couple of points if we can on the road, because we've got 5 home games to come. So, you know, if we continue in the form that we're in that, then we're going to put ourselves in an extremely strong position. But we have to address these away performances, because 3 of the last 4 haven't been great, and the odd one out in that was a trip to Oxford, who were in pretty dire form. And I don't think you can read too much into that game.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. Joe, from what you saw of Argyle on Saturday, do you look at this as a sense of, well, hang on, you know, if that's what we're competing against, then we've got an outside chance if we can put a run together?
I thought Argyle were very good first half. I thought they passed through our press really, really well, which no other team so far, since we became this sort of steam train, as I've described it, no team's been able to do that. They managed to hold us off for half an hour. We nicked the ball a couple of times. They had a couple of good chances, and obviously the big one was with Harry instead making the save from Hardy just at the start of the second half. That could have changed the game. I can see Joe's face. He's still having nightmares about that one, because I think if he scores there, it's a different game. So no, I think obviously the result says 3-0. I think Plymouth are a very good side, and Joe's probably making a really good point that with the fixtures, really they should get over the line. I guess we're relying on them getting a bit twitchy and us continuing this momentum. So there's still a lot to play for. I think obviously we know back into the season, some of those games where we look at it and think, yeah, 3 points in the bag. You know, teams like Morecambe, Joel, are going to need to get some wins, and they definitely did us. So yeah, I think there's a chance that could happen. So that's what I'm holding hope out for. Sorry, Joe.
Gab, very quickly, one thing I will say, in terms of the promotion race, I cannot wait to see the back of this Wembley game. I'm not saying it's having any effect on the squad or any effect on the club, but I just can't wait till this distraction is out of the system, and then we can focus. I think we'll have 8 games left after the final. I just cannot wait to just focus on those 8, 4 at home, 4 away. And that is, for me, that's when the mini league starts, after the 2nd of April. It doesn't start this week with 10 to go. It will start once we have that distraction out of the way, from my personal point of view.
Cole?
I couldn't agree more. Honestly, I couldn't agree more. I kind of hoped, really, after we'd beaten Accrington in the semi, that we were just going to shelve it and move on. The problem we've got, and obviously Plymouth may very well be the same, but certainly our fan base, if you will, obviously, because I'm 35, so I have a relative, enjoyment of being a Bolton fan over the few years, but we've got a younger generation that are craving something, because we've been through so much through the proverbial over the last few years. They're craving that Wembley big day out thing. I'm like, can we just?
I'm trying to think, Cole. Was your last Wembley game the semi-final with Stoke in the FA Cup? Was it that? I know it's not one to think about. I know it's not, but I'm generally trying to think about when Bolton were last at Wembley. Was it that?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, so that was a semi-final in the FA Cup against Stoke when we were back in the Prem. When we were back in the Prem, and
5-0 that was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a battering.
The start, 5-0 defeat, and that was a lot of Bolton fans think that it was the start of the downfall of the club.
But then you beat Arsenal the following game.
We did. Yeah, we had a good team back then, though, and we actually beat Stoke and get 5-0 ourselves a few weeks after that as well, the same season at home.
Wasn't there that whole thing of Bolton always beating, actually, and Stoke as well? Bolton and Stoke always beating Arsenal, so that was a bit of a given at that time, wasn't it?
This was Tony Pulis' Stoke era, so they were horrible to Arsenal. They just absolutely hated coming up against them.
Yeah. But I'm definitely in agreement. The EFL trophy I think it's becoming somewhat of a distraction, not only for the players, but certainly from the fans' perspective as well. So I'm definitely on board with that.
Joel, I mean, Morecambe are going to have a big role to play in the seasons, both for Argyle and Barnsley. I feel like I would rather play Morecambe at home than I would go to the Mazuma, because I just know that I know that there is that chance that, as you mentioned, there is a congested pitch. Derek Adams is able to come up with an individual game plan where that kind of becomes harder on maybe a bigger pitch as well. So do you look at Argyle and think we've got an outside chance of getting something there under Derek?
Yeah, I think if we're going to have an impact on one team's season out of Barnsley and Argyle, it's more likely to be Argyle purely because of the fact that we're playing them at the Mazuma. And if it was the other way round, I'd be saying it. Barnsley would have an effect on. But in fairness, we've done our work on Barnsley, so you can't accuse us of being biased. But we've worked our magic on Barnsley already at the Mazuma. But
this is why we're expecting you to do us a favour, Joe. You've got to balance it out, mate.
I know exactly. Yeah, we've got share the love round, but or the kind of misery, whatever you want, whatever way you want to look at it. But yeah, I think if there is an impact to be made, it'll probably more than likely be on the Argyle game, and it's a funny one. Obviously, last night losing 4-1 to Charlton, we were so poor, and a lot of what went wrong there is.
Do you worry about that continuing, Joel? Because
I
looked at that last night and thought, oh,
yeah,
I think they'll bounce back from that. I don't think that. I don't think they'll lose all their remaining games. I
no, but what I'm saying is, Gab, for me, I earmark that as a really good opportunity for Morecambe.
Yeah.
Because of being at home, them being quite good at home, Charlton being very unimpressive this season, and to be 3-0 down at half time and out of sight didn't look good.
The problem is the same problem we had against Shrewsbury on Saturday, which was defending set pieces. And ironically, it's a problem that kind of we dealt with really well against Bolton, and Ian Everett actually alluded to it in his post-match interview about how Farron Rolson just won everything. Absolutely, we had to defend a lot of corners against Bolton because they got a lot of territory, and we blocked off the box quite well, so we did end up conceding a lot of corners. So Faz Rawson was just an absolute beast in the air, and he does that thing that a lot of the way teams marking defending corners, they have their best header of the ball, who kind of operates in the zonal space, and he goes and attacks the ball as best he can. And that's what Faz does for us. But in these past couple of games, Shrewsbury and Charlton, they're just putting the ball where Faz can't really go. Like they're hitting a loopy one, maybe towards the outer edge.
His forehead would be so big it'd be able to cover enough.
Well, no, yeah, you'd like to think it would be able to cover it. And that's the funny thing. Like Everett was pointing out, and they might be kicking themselves that maybe they just didn't think of that earlier, because it's weird that as soon as it's not hit towards Rawson, then we just fall to pieces. And it's ridiculous. Like at the end of the day, when you're defending corners, yeah, we've got a great defensive weapon in Faz Rawson, but everybody else needs to do the job, and they're not. And that's why we're conceding these goals. Like, I mean, the penalty against Shrewsbury was stupid from Crowley, just a moment of madness, stick his arm out. But like the other ones, the people are lost out on headers, like at the near post, at the far post, and
Joel, do you think that part of this is there's maybe not an awful lot of physicality in midfield? Because we've talked about, there has been a strong midfield this season with Jensen Weir and Liam Shaw, that, players, even Adam Mayer, you could throw into that equation as a sort of wide option. But it feels like it's maybe been missing that physical presence. I mean, Usman Fane, for whatever reason, maybe injuries, hasn't been playing so much.
He's gone back to Malaysia.
Oh, he's gone back, sorry. Yeah, so he's out of the picture. So has it been missing that sort of physical presence, an additional option to just head balls out of the box and contribute in that sort of physical sense?
Yeah, I mean, Fane was never really one to head balls out of the box. And Derek ended up using him more as a kind of like an aggressive pressing eight, which he did to great effect against Barnsley, actually. That was his maybe second to last start, and he had a really good game. But in games, especially against teams in and around us in the relegation zone, he wasn't very effective, Fane, because they were the games where we had to do a bit more of the ball, and he was quite a hindrance. But overall, we've not really had a proper sitting midfielder in our side. The only person we've had to play that role is Liam Gibson, the converted fullback. So that's the thing. I think you're right. we haven't had that big physical presence in midfield.
Mm.
Obviously, we know how much Derek likes Jan Songo. Maybe he won't be the man in League One in this day and age. In a year of our Lord 23, maybe League One is past him. But somebody who can do that mopping up job, and obviously Burton have got a few players who can do that, and we lack that. And for a side that is going to be scrapping and fighting in games and having to have a bit of a physical edge to him, that's something we probably really, really have missed.
That's a little bit of a worry for me, Joel, and I think we talked about this after the Cambridge game, where you can see that there are some really technical players, surprisingly so, you might say, in this Morecambe side, and yet it maybe doesn't have that sort of aggressive, sort of powerful sort of component that you'd maybe expect a sort of direct Derek Adams side to have. I mean, is that a bit of a worry for you going into these last 10 games?
It's been a worry all season, if I'm perfectly honest. It's ultimately, any good football team, you've got to have balance. Obviously, you were speaking about Morley before, and maybe the bit of a need to have somebody in and around him who can do a bit of the lead work and let him just do the playmaking. And whatever team you've got, like, you need to have somebody to checks and balances, and obviously to varying degrees depending on what style you're trying to play and what type of players you have. But you do need to have people who release your attacking players and vice versa. And we've just not had that balance. We've got, I see, probably in terms of talent, probably one of a really, really talented squad, the best probably we've ever had, arguably, with people like Jensen Weir and Liam Shaw and that. But it doesn't matter as much if it kind of goes to waste if you've not got that balance to let them do the stuff that they need to do.
The two things, sorry to interrupt you, Joel, the two things I noticed when I went to the Mazuma the other week was they lacked the cutting edge in the final third, and they didn't have that bite in the field. They're the two elements of, because build up play, lovely. They played it out from the back surprisingly well. I was actually quite obviously the Mazuma quite low to close to the pitch, and it was quite impressive in that respect. But they just missed that. And obviously, you've signed a lad who's played for Everton, haven't you, as a forward? I can't remember the guy's name.
It's not worth getting a big deal about that.
You know what?
No.
Needs the service.
He needs service, but he is very good. Like, he has not played in about a year, and he did 90 last night, and you could tell he didn't back himself to win any physical battle, be it a race or like a physical battle. He just didn't back himself, and you can understand why. But when he did get a bit of room to play, he's just you could tell he was a level above. And
that'd be clear why Derek Adams has signed him. Then if that's that cutting edge you've kind of missing up top. Although obviously Ed made a good point. If he's not going to get the service, he's not really worth the carrot, is it? Really? No respect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then like you say, it's having that balance in midfield just to give that little bit of cutting edge. And we balanced it better against Bolton. That was more bite in our midfield than we've had in a while, because we put Gibson in midfield, and he did quite a good job at snapping into a few things. But overall, we just don't quite have that level of bite that you might want from a Derek Adams side.
That certainly makes sense. So, Joe, I want to talk to you. We've talked about midfielders tonight with Aaron Morley at Bolton. I want to talk to you about Luke O'Connell, mate. I mean, what a season this guy is having.
If any scouts or any other bigger clubs are watching, nah. Turn off now.
Too late.
We've already had him, Joel.
Too late. Unbelievable. This lad is unbelievable.
He came through our academy, didn't he?
I
remember seeing him at Bolton. I remember seeing him when he was at Reading and just thinking, yeah, this kid's good. And then he went to Celtic, didn't he?
Yeah.
I have no idea how we've got him, honestly. Free transfer and all. Yeah. I mean, he's class. He does. He just wins the ball really, tackles brilliantly. He's got the art of tackling perfect. And the greatest thing is he just turns so quickly in midfield and gets us going on the front foot. And he's just the engine to Barnsley's team. Every time he gets that ball, he's going to win it back for you. Then he's going to turn and he's just going to play that simple. He's going to draw a couple of players in, play that simple pass, and before you're on the front foot. If he gets a chance to shoot at the edge of the area, he'll smack it in. So what more can you ask for? He does all the simple stuff brilliantly. I was chatting to some of the guys, and it's like he's got the. I don't know how old he is. He's probably early 20s, I think. But he's got the mentality maybe of like a 32-year-old. Like, you know what I mean? He's playing the game way ahead of his years, but he's still got the fitness and athleticism of a 21-year-old. So yeah, I can't speak highly enough of him. If we don't get to the Championship, I don't see him being at Barnsley much longer because I think he's only going to go up and up. So yeah, he's absolute quality.
Yeah, fair play to the recruitment team on that. I mean, what I love, Joe, about your side from both the times I've seen you in the flesh, not you in the flesh, Barnsley in the flesh, but but the partnerships, the relationships. So on the right hand side, the Adam Phillips and Jordan Williams have got a brilliant connection, and then on the other side, you're looking at Herbie Kane, Liam Kitching, and Nicky Cadden just have a brilliant understanding, and it feels like players aren't getting the ball and then thinking, oh, what am I going to do with it? It's like they already know what they want to do with it before they get the ball. And that, for me, speaks to excellent coaching and just brilliant understanding between these different units.
Yeah, and I just think there's a great bond. I was interviewing Michael Duff the other week, and he was talking about how he wants the lads to be great human beings as well as footballers. Yeah. And I know Paul Warner, Rotherham Derby, said similar sort of quotes when he spoke in the press. And I think it goes a long way, like to have that just down-to-earth mentality, not thinking you're a hot shot, not thinking you're bigger than the team, just all being a team together and realising that actually working together and getting on really well is going to be better for all of your careers. And I think that he's installed that mentality in the lads, and they all play for each other. And that's why we've managed to create this great style, a good style of football as well in terms of the press and then the little passing moves to get out of difficult situations. And yeah, at the minute, we're absolutely flying, and all credit to Michael Duff. He has turned, this situation was horrendous last season, as you know, Gabe. We spoke about it a lot. It was so bad. It's like, I've supported Barnsley for I'm not too old, I'm only 30, but for a decent part of my life. And I can't remember it being as bad as that. Some older fans will say that we have had worse seasons, but last season was definitely the worst for me. So for him to have turned that round already this season is unbelievable, and an absolute full credit to Michael Duff. He's some gaffer, some leader.
I mean, coming to you on this, Ed, my feeling on Barnsley before the season was that they might finish 8th. I thought we'd see some good work with Michael Duff, but I didn't necessarily I thought they'd almost have this season next season. I thought that this might be a bit more of a building campaign. Are you surprised at the speed that Michael Duff has been able to get this side playing as it has?
100%. 100%. I was completely the same as you pre-season. I remember we go back to summer. It was, the reports were saying it was between him and Jimmy Thorpe-Hasselbank as the front runners for the job, and there was only one obvious choice that Barnsley was going to do that. They absolutely did the right one. I mean, the work that Duff did in Cheltenham to transform them from a kind of a bottom end League Two side, you probably say, with Cheltenham into a solid League One outfit. Great return to the third tier last season. Always felt like it was going to be a really top appointment, and coming off the back of that horrific season that Barnsley had, as Joe has said, you kind of thought he'll steady things out. He'll get them back on track, start looking upwards. The transformation here is absolutely incredible, to think that we're talking about a team that genuinely doesn't not just feel like a playoff side, could well be ending up in all max in this season. Is a massive testament to just how good this team looks at the moment.
Yeah, wow. And I've got to give credit as well to the board, because there was a lot of problems at that level last season. There were some changes in the summer, some fresh faces at board level, lots of changes there. And the new people who have come in have been fab. There was obviously a lot of doubters at the start of the season because we'd lost faith in what was happening there. But then, new people coming in like Julian Key has been fantastic, brought fresh energy, fresh ideas to the club to try and move us forward. Callie, the CEO's stepped it up in terms of recruitment, the likes Luke Connell, and then Nirav as well, the chairman. So, and the Crines, who have been around for quite a while. So all of them, I just want to give them massive credit because, they've took the board in Barnsley, some of the older faces obviously took a lot of stick. These guys have come in, took a bit of stick early in the season because fans were just unhappy generally at the situation. And now we're starting to see the fruits of all the hard work that's gone on, definitely from Michael Duff, definitely from the players, but we've got to acknowledge board level as well. The recruitment's been brilliant, and the way they're doing things off the pitch as well.
Just does a transformed club, doesn't it?
Yeah.
From this time 12 months ago.
Yeah, everybody.
Not even 12 months, actually, less than that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, even probably, but what is it, 6-7 months maybe? I don't know. It's it's been great to see, and I've been fortunate enough to see some of the early workings behind the scenes when fans were still quite, disgruntled. We were still like, that was the worst season last season. We'd have a bad result like at Morecambe, Joel, and it'd be everything's falling apart again. to see that building process and to go through that transition to where we are at now and starting to finally see the hard work paying off it's amazing. And yeah, I can only say I'm very happy at the moment.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to caveat this slightly by saying I'm still sitting in the unknown a little bit in terms of how much of this is down to Michael Duff and how good a coach and manager he is, and how much Barnsley structurally have massively changed. It might well have been a complete transformation at boardroom level, but I'm still a little bit unknown about that. But I think you can only give credit for now in terms of everyone and the job that's been done. And certainly I think you've got an excellent manager there. Coming to you then, Joe, I want to ask you about how Argyle sort of recover some of the form that, well, much the form we've seen from them for much of the season, because you obviously have the blow with Mike Cooper getting injured, one or two key loans getting recalled. Obviously, Dan Scarr, big aerial centre-back, got injured as well. How does Stephen Schumacher sort of remedy some of the issues?
So, in terms of losing Scarr and Cooper, since we've lost them at Sheffield Wednesday, if you forget that, so moving on from the very first game since they were unavailable, we've only lost twice. And that was the aberration against Peterborough, and as I said, in a game that could have finished 13-12, and then the defeat on Saturday. And we've picked up important wins since then. So I don't know necessarily. I mean, obviously, it's had an impact. You know, we've lost the best keeper in the league, and we've lost one of our best aerial threats at the back in Dan Scarr. I think we recovered quite well losing Morgan Whittaker. Initially, it was a bit of a hammer blow. Obviously, we lost him the week we were going to Bolton, and we just lacked a bit of a creative spark that day, and he could have given it to us. But we responded pretty well at Ipswich the week after without him. And when you lose a player of that quality who's been so instrumental, it's always going to be a bit tricky for you. But the run of games coming up on paper now are favourable to us. We've got Forest Green at home on Saturday, and I'm sorry if any Forest Green fans are watching. The beast is angry, I'm afraid, this week. It's going to be a full house, and they are all going to want to see a massive response this week. And then we go to Accrington next Tuesday, and Accrington are in or out. They seem to enjoy having a player sent off at the moment, but
a goalkeeper sent off.
Yeah, that too. He's certainly enjoying getting sent off at the moment, isn't he? But it's a tricky place to go any time of the year, and particularly when they're scrapping for their lives down the bottom. And then we've got the Easter fixtures. I mean, Joel was talking about how it's a lot more favourable them playing Argyle at the Mazuma. It's Good Friday as well. Of all the times to have to make that trip, the last time we made a Good Friday trip up there, it didn't end well at all. Half the fans got stranded on the motorway, and we got beat. So
was that the Jordan Slew red card for diving?
I think so. Yeah.
What a day.
Derek was definitely the manager, because I think, if I remember rightly, Jordan Houghton scored that day for Argyle. He hasn't scored.
I think it's basically the only time we've ever beaten Argyle. So.
Yeah, Jordan Houghton doesn't score many, but that day was memorable. So we get that game out of the way. We've got Lincoln at home, and then we've got the derby. So as much as I'm saying they're favourable fixtures, the more and more you think about it, they do become trickier as the season goes on, when teams have things to play for. But in terms of arresting the form, we just won back-to-back home games. I heard Rich on here last week talking about a dubious penalty we got. If you had me on here, Gab, last week, I'd have been moaning about the Stonewall penalty we didn't get the week before. But and the two
What's a penalty? What does that mean? It's been a full year since Barnsley had a league penalty.
You're doing all right, Joe. Don't worry about it.
You almost had one on Saturday.
Almost is the key word.
Almost. But the two defeats we had as well is we've got to stop giving opponents legs up in games. We went to Peterborough. Saxon Ali gave away a very soft penalty inside 16 minutes. And you're just inviting Johnson Clark-Harris to change the game, aren't you, after 15 minutes? You can't do that. And then obviously on Saturday, we kept it tight for the first half, and Ryan Hardy's one-on-one with the goalkeeper. The script is usually written, and his touch let him down, and Isted did well to gather the ball. So we've got to stop letting sides into games, is the other thing. But I am confident that we will always outscore teams at home. It's just whether or not we can go away to your Morecambes, Exeter, with all the connotations that's going to come with that, Shrewsbury as well, and Accrington next Tuesday. It's whether or not we can go to those places. And Stephen Schumacher hinted at it after Saturday's defeat, that we are perhaps now going to have to adapt to the way we play away from home. Perhaps go for more of your roll your sleeves up into the trenches, you go sort of battling spirit.
Do you think Sam Cosgrove's going to come into his own at that point?
Yeah, I hope his calf's recovered, because we could have done with him on Saturday. And
I also think,
yeah, he had a little calf strain, so he didn't play the Derby game or the Barnsley game at the weekend. But he will add a different edge to the attacking threat. But we just got to be a bit more resolute, Gab. We've got to stop giving sides legs up in games at the moment, and when we do that, we'll hit the bullseye, and points will start coming our way again. But then we haven't dropped off too much.
Yeah,
points per game are still above 2, and in the last 8, I think I read a stat earlier today that our points per game are still just around the 2 mark. So it's just those two heavy defeats is just what's given everyone a little bit of a panic, but I'm calm.
Well, that's good to know. Before we finish off, I want to get the some predictions from our special guests. Coming to you, Cole. First of all, could you name me who you think's going up automatically with Sheffield Wednesday, and who you think's if you think the playoffs, if the top 6 is going to change?
I'll answer the latter first. I don't think the playoffs will change. I think the teams that are in the mix at present will stay there. I think our home form will cement us in the playoffs, which is pretty solid. I think we've only lost 2 or 3 games this season. Ed'll probably know better than me, I would imagine. And as for the top 2, I guess it kind of answers that really. I think Plymouth have got enough about them to kind of just about stay in there, despite the fact that Ipswich did look so impressive the other day. I would rather play Plymouth in the playoffs, with all due respect to Plymouth, than Ipswich. I just thought that Ipswich looked that little bit better than them when they came to our place, but the work's already been done.
Answer that one after Wembley.
Well, yeah, Wembley's a one-off. I mean, I just think Ipswich looked more impressive on the day than Plymouth did, but it's a one-off game, I guess, isn't it? But
yeah, absolutely. Joe, same question to you.
I'm really biased right now. Well, I'll get the unbiased bit out of the way. Wednesday going to win the league, which pains me to say as a Barnsley fan, but let's get that out of the way. It's going to be tight. It's going to be really tight. I'm not going to pretend that it's not, but I just feel this momentum at the minute. I am getting a bit giddy. I think it's really down to whether Plymouth can get through those tough games against the bottom sides. And I know Joe's keeping a very calm face. I'm not sure if there's more nerves under that calm composure, but
can't see his hands.
Yeah, where's that water going? I'm going to have to say it. I think Barnsley are going to nick second. I really, it's a big claim. It is a big claim, but we're on a wave at the minute. I think the fact Ipswich are in between us and Plymouth as well helps, because it puts more pressure on Plymouth that Ipswich are actually much more realistically can catch them. But I just think we're on a trajectory unless somebody can stop the steam train. I think we're looking at top 2. And I think my third team to go up would be Derby, which maybe surprises quite a lot of people, including Derby fans who seem to disagree with me. But I think Paul Warne, when it comes to a playoff situation, and Richie Barker could lead them through that, navigate them through that. Obviously, playoffs, we know anything can happen. So that would be my heart prediction, and slightly head, but we'll see. I'll go with that.
I'll let you go with that. What do you think, Joe? Well, I suppose the big question is, do you think Argyle hold on to second spot?
Yes, I do. Just because of the home form. I think we're more than good enough to pick up points on the road, Gab. We all know we are. And we don't have to go to a Peterborough or a Barnsley or a Sheffield Wednesday or any of those daunting places anymore. It's only Exeter and places like that we got to go to. So, although as I must stress, I'm not looking forward to a Derek Adams side on Good Friday. There's something in the back of my head about that game. I'm going to have sleepless nights about it. But yeah, I do think we've enough credit in the bank. It would be gut-wrenching now to let it slip. A lot of people keep referring to the fact that we let it slip last year. But I mean, compare the run in this year to last year, and then you look at, we lost Hardy with half a dozen games to go. We lost Kamara with half a dozen games to go last year. We lost real key players. And I know we've lost Cooper, but we got Dan Scarr back very soon. So there can be no excuses in that respect that almost every outfield player will now be fit for the run-in. Touch wood. So
Is your head made of wood then, Jay?
Well, yeah. It's either that or I touch the table, but I can't prove that that's wooden. So look, I think we've enough credit in the bank. I don't think it's going to be as easy as I thought maybe a month ago. I had hopes that we might have it sewn up earlier than perhaps what it's going to be, i.e. because I don't want to have to make the long trip to Port Vale for a 12 o'clock kickoff on the final day to see it be done. In terms of the playoffs, after what Joe's just said, I think Wycombe will pit Barnsley to that last spot, because I think Barnsley are going to probably fall away. How many joking?
That's just bitter.
I think it will be as it is probably now. I think in that order. I do think Cole's right. As I said earlier, I think Bolton probably just about have enough credit in the bank. I understand your concerns as neutrals about Wycombe's form, whether or not they're consistent enough. Peterborough are probably doing everything too late, as is often the trend when they have a dodgy start to the season. Who's going to come out of it? Derby looked good for 45 minutes, but collapsed against the second half. I thought we had the better of 55, 60 minutes against Barnsley at the weekend, but crikey, they swatted us aside like nobody's business. Ipswich haven't overly impressed me in the two games we've played against them. I accept they've got very good players, but I do worry about them. And Bolton, as partisan as it is, I do have to bring up the stat. Bolton are yet to score past us this season. So if it comes down
we'll
to
remind
it,
you of that after the final.
I'm happy for it to be clipped and sent to me after a 7-0 defeat at Wembley or something. But, it's just that's the lagging thing in my mind about Bolton, is that they are yet to score. Although we've only scored one past them, I think. So it's pretty tight.
This is going to be a drab final then.
It'll be 3-all. It'll be 3-all then, won't it?
I hope so.
I'm selling the final to you, didn't I? To be fair,
yeah, you really get me.
But yeah, I'm going to be really. I am the long and short of it, Gab. It's a really boring answer, but I think the top six will be in the position they are now.
Okay. Well, very interesting to see. Before I let you go, then, I do want to touch on the relegation dogfight as well. Now, for the purpose of this, Forest Green are down. If we say Cambridge are maybe still just about in it, but let's look at so Oxford, Accrington Stanley, MK Dons and Morecambe. If you had to pick two of those sides to go down, which two would you go for? Starting with you, Colin.
Milton Keynes Dons. Because I would probably say, I think Accrington.
MK and Accrington go down. Okay.
Be it because two reasons. I think Accrington have done a phenomenal job staying within this league for as long as they have. Credit to them. But I think it might that particular steam's train is running out a little bit. And I think they're lacking in a number of areas as well. The weather's still down there, and the weather's getting better. So when you go to Accrington, the weather's a little bit better. It's not as difficult to rock up at that particular stadium. And MK, I think, because you need, if you're going to try and stay up, you need a little bit about yourself, something at home in terms of atmosphere, in terms of great, and all the type of things that Morecambe have at their disposal. And I don't think entering into a 30,000 seater stadium with a couple of thousand people there would help them in that particular fight. So that's probably the reason why.
Okay. I actually think that the atmosphere at Stadium MK is a little bit better than is that sometimes given credit for. But I certainly take your points. Joe, would you agree with Carlo on Accrington Stanley and MK Dons going down, or would you pick other teams? Oh,
Which
sorry,
Joe,
Joe
me?
We've got
Beardsall.
two Joes to Gab.
Yeah, there we go. I think Morecambe are the best of the bunch that we've played down there. I'm not just saying that to get you to follow me on Twitter, Joel, but I think Morecambe certainly put a shift in against us, worked hard, did everything you need if you're down there struggling. Obviously, it looks like they're in a bit more of a sticky patch, but I think they've got enough to get over the line. Oxford are falling like a ton of bricks. So I think I'd probably put Oxford at serious risk at this point of possibly going. And I'd probably say MK Dons is the other one. So I'd say Morecambe to stay up, Dons and possibly Oxford to go down. I think Accrington again showed quite a lot of spirit when we played them at their place. So
okay. Well, both you saying Morecambe are going to stay up. Do you agree with that, Joe? Joe Bell, I should say.
You've got a hat trick in this respect, Gab. I said it the last time I was on that Derek would achieve the Great Escape Volume 2. I have every faith in the man. We actually have quite a big role to play in this battle because Cambridge have to come to Home Park. We have to go to Morecambe. We have to go to Accrington. Burton have to come to Home Park. And Forest Green obviously have to come to Home Park. But I think everyone's sort of consigned Forest Green back to League Two.
Would you take 4 points from trips to Morecambe and Accrington combined then, Joe, do you reckon?
I'll be wanting 6, to be honest.
Yeah, I can't now,
in.
Gab. Okay. I can't now. If you asked me a month ago, perhaps I probably would have done, but I can't now. I think we've got to go into every game needing to win. I do think Morecambe will get out of it. I agree with what the lads there have said about Oxford. I worry about whether or not Liam Manning. I know he got MK Dons to where they were, but I worry if he's got enough to keep Oxford in the division because they were so abject when we played them the other week. They just gave it to us on a plate at times. I really want Cambridge to stay up because I do like Mark Bonner. But I worry about where their next win's going to come from, if truth be told. So I'd have to say Cambridge will go. I think Oxford will end up going. And I think time might have run out on Accrington. Obviously, I could be left with my egg on my face if John Coleman masterminds a victory over us next Tuesday. But I do think that perhaps there's too many things conspiring to go against them with the ill discipline and they have injury issues, don't they? And I just think at this point, those would be the 3 I think will join Forest Green in League Two.
Very interesting. Well, listen, gentlemen, it's been such a pleasure to chat about League One with you on the EFL Debate podcast this evening. Thanks as always to our regulars, Joel Shooter from the Shrimpstress podcast and Ed Walker from D3D4 Football podcast. And a special thanks to our special guests, Cole BWFC from the Fanzone podcast, Joe Beardsall from Red All Over, and Joe Bell from Argyle Life. This has been EFL Debate, the League One podcast. Thanks to you for watching at home, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks.